Hello. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, you guys. I'm excited to chat with you today. We're talking about vocal strain, pain, and the larger topic of vocal health. Very important for singers of all experience levels. I'm talking mostly today to beginning singers. As a beginning singer, just starting out exercising your voice, especially if you've watched any of the videos on 30 Day Singer, I've probably scared you about damaging your voice. And I hope to alleviate some of those anxieties today and just talk you through what you should keep in mind, how to keep your voice healthy, and how to know if you might be pushing your voice a little bit too far. So first thing to talk about, actually a disclaimer to give is that I'm a vocal coach. I am not a speech therapist. I am not a laryngologist. That's an ENT who's, further specialized in the voice and voice use. So the advice that I give is from a singer's perspective, a vocal coach's perspective. So just putting that disclaimer out there right away. No amount of exercise, vocal exercise, is going to fix a vocal injury. So if you fear that that you have an underlying vocal injury, and the rule of thumb for kind of determining whether you might be in the danger zone is if you've been hoarse for 2 weeks or longer. So if that's the case, if you've been hoarse, sore throat, voice quality that's abnormal for you, if your voice sounds really breathy, strained, rough, raspy, weak, if your voice is significantly higher or lower in pitch than it normally is, if all of that is ringing a bell for you, then my advice is please go on vocal rest and get an appointment with your doctor, or at least get them on the phone, tell them what's been going on. You won't make things better by doing a bunch of vocal warm-ups to try to work that out. Today's lesson, we're focusing on first what we'd consider a normal level of vocal strain for the average singer. And most teachers, myself included, would be very quick to tell you that strain and tension in general are antithetical to free, healthy singing. But the reality is there is a difference between vocal effort and unnecessary tension. So how do we tell the difference between vocal effort and strain or tension that could damage you? So 2 examples of good, healthy, necessary vocal effort. The first example is the feeling in your low abdomen, the feeling of your low abdominal muscles engaging to keep your rib cage elevated. So if you've taken any of the lessons on breath support or breathing for singing, you'll know that we inhale with a relaxed belly. And then when we sing and when we're exhaling on that breath to sing, we actually engage our low abdominals and our intercostal muscles in this gentle down and out push. And the purpose of that is to keep our rib cage elevated, to keep our diaphragm low for longer, and to maintain space for those lungs to stay expanded so we don't leak out all of the air we just took in, and so that we can sing on compressed air and conserve our air so we don't run out in 2 seconds. So that's the first kind or category of healthy vocal effort I'm talking about, and you'll feel that in your body, not your throat. The second type of good, healthy vocal effort is the paired effort of maintaining good chord closure and breath support. So especially when you are in mixed voice or if you're higher in your chest register, healthy vocal effort can sound and look like, ah, and that feels feels more effortful than if I go, ah, and my body's disengaged and I don't have as much cord closure. So there's nothing unhealthy in the vocal effort it took to have a little bit firmer cord closure and engage my body with that down and out feeling. That's healthy vocal effort. Some examples of bad vocal effort, or what we would call strain or unnecessary tension. If anything in your body, your throat or your abdomen, feels squeezed, locked up, like you're reaching, a lot of times reaching with the chin is a problem. If you feel like you're forcing something, or if you feel like your muscles are kind of grabbing, that would fall under bad, or starting to veer into the unnecessarily tense or strained kind of muscular effort. So the reason I'm not giving specifics, so I did say abdominals and then throat. The reason I didn't say specifically your jaw locking up or your abdomen locking up, it's if you feel that sensation in your jaw, your tongue, your neck, your throat, your abdomen, you don't ever want to be feeling that sensation. Squeeze, lock, reaching, grabbing, forcing. So if you do feel that you are straining, so if you're like, oh my goodness, I'm singing and I do feel like I'm locking up, what do I do? So my approach to reducing that unnecessary harmful tension when we sing, first is to pinpoint what it is that's tensing. So if you are new to singing, I recommend you sing in front of a mirror. That way you can get visual cues, not just relying on the sensation and the sound. All of those will tell you if you're tensing. So if you are tensing, you'll be able to see some squeezing, straining, muscles popping out. You should also hear a difference in the sound between relaxed singing, ah, and ah, squeezing, straining. So there'll be a difference in, visually, you can usually see some muscle squeezing or popping out of place. Second, you should be able to hear a difference in the sound. Does it sound free and relaxed, or does it sound tense or constricted in some way? And then third, you should be able to feel the difference as well. You should be able to feel, ooh, I feel like my jaw is locking up, or ooh, it really feels like my belly muscles are squeezing inward. So first, pinpoint what is tensing. A really common thing to tense for beginning singers is their jaw. They don't like to open their mouths very tall. And I understand that. It's scary to relax and just let that sound out. But so once you've pinpointed what's tensing, we'll use your jaw as an example. Then the first way to combat that strain or tension is to move those muscles to prevent them from tensing in the first place. So for example, with our jaw, we could soften and mobilize our jaw so that it can't clench. So if we're singing, ah, and I'm squeezing and clenching my jaw and locking it up, I might instead add a Y to the beginning of that vocal exercise. Ya, 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 ya. So it's forcing my jaw to move so that it can't squeeze up in the first place. The second thing to try is to remove that muscle group, whatever's tensing, remove it from the equation entirely. So basically go overboard in relaxation. So if your tongue is tensing, that's a lot more difficult to feel and even hear. But if you do notice that your tongue is kind of jumping back or jumping up, especially when you're going for a high pitch that you perceive as kind of scary, then one method to reduce that tongue tension would be get your tongue out of your mouth, remove it from the singing equation, go overboard on relaxing. So instead of ah, with with a really overly tense tongue, we might stick that tongue out, feel it just resting on our bottom lip. Go overboard on relaxation, then take the tongue back inside the mouth, but make sure that it's staying relaxed and soft. Much easier to go overboard on relaxation and then dial it back than it is to just tell yourself, stop tensing or relax. That usually doesn't work. We have to replace a bad habit with a good one. So the ultimate goal with everything I just covered, both identifying what muscle group is tensing, moving it so that it can't tense, or removing it from the equation and then dialing it back to kind of a normal position. The ultimate goal with all of that is to let the correct muscles do their job without the help of those extrinsic muscles that are tensing and trying to help you out. A couple other tips to counteract strain. Number one, make sure you're breathing well. Breath is our fuel, and lots of times singers just forget to breathe, or they're not taking a nice, low, relaxed breath. They're taking, these shallow kind of catch breaths all the time. So make sure that you have enough breath to support your, warm up or your song, whatever you're working on. Second, if the range of a song is an issue, change the key overall, or consider changing your registration for the section that you're tensing on. So for example, if you're singing, let's say you're singing the national anthem and you're really straining on, and the rocket's red glare, and it's just not going well. One thing you could do is lower the key so that it's in a more comfy spot so you don't need to tense or strain. And the rocket's red glare. Or if you did want to stay in that higher key, and the rocket's red glare. Okay, maybe that's too high for chest voice for you, and you're gonna strain and squeeze and grab. And the rocket's red glare. If you instead sang that with more head voice or mixed registration, that can also really let go of that tension. And third, this one's a little bit more subtle, but third tip is to modify your vowels if that helps you. So usually the most common vowels to modify would be oo vowels and e vowels. They're our most closed vowels, and for a lot of singers, when they're singing on an oo or an e vowel, they start to tense a little bit. Their mouth position is naturally more closed, but the sound is starting to get kind of constricted and strained. So if you find that on a word or an exercise with an oo or e, and you feel this constriction in your throat, you might want to modify that vowel. So instead of a pure ooh, really, really small ooh vowel, ooh, you can drop that jaw, have a little bit more of an open ooh. Same thing with e, drop that jaw. I promise most of the time your oohs and e vowels will feel a lot better and sound a lot better too if you open that vowel up. So those 3 tips for counteracting strain. 1, make sure you're breathing. 2, if range is an issue, drop the key, or bring it up too if it's too low for you and you're straining for low notes, or change your registration on the notes that you're straining on. And then 3rd, modify vowels as necessary and as needed. How do you tell if you're pushing your voice too far? This is a question I get all the time from beginning singers. They're concerned about overdoing it. They're asking, how much time should I be singing every day? And they're scared about injuring their voice and just overdoing it in the beginning. So the 3 main things to look for to tell if you're pushing your voice maybe a little bit too far. Number 1, if you're feeling pain in the moment that you're singing. Number 2, if you're feeling pain or hoarseness after singing. So you might feel okay when you're singing, and then you take a break, and then you notice that your voice is, hoarse and really tired, lots of vocal fry. And third, if you have pain or hoarseness the following day. So sometimes you might be powering through and you're thinking, I'm a rock star, I can do anything. And you wake up the next morning and whoa, you feel your vocal folds are really swollen. It's difficult to achieve clear tone. You're feeling some of that pain and hoarseness. It's just a little bit delayed. Those are all signs that you might be pushing your voice a little bit too far. There's a difference here between how we approach building muscles in the gym and building our vocal instrument. Oftentimes I do liken singing, especially for beginning singers, I liken singing to a sport because it's not about just unlocking some secret, that lets you sing like a rock star. It's a skill like any other. You're building coordinations, you're practicing those coordinations. And so often I like to compare singing to something like, perfecting your golf swing or perfecting your, free throw technique. It has to do with muscles, but more than muscle strength, it has to do with learning that coordination, the technique, the connection between your brain and your body doing what you want to do. So I think some singers think, oh, pain is okay because when I go to the gym, I'm working out and I feel pain in the moment, but my muscles are growing and they're going to grow, bigger and stronger than before. Our vocal instrument is not that way. So these are not big muscles that we're building. You'll notice, the best singers in the world don't have these huge neck muscles or anything like that. Our larynx and our vocal folds within our larynx and the tiny, tiny muscles coordinating the movement of your larynx and the movement of your vocal folds, those are learning new coordinations, but it's not like a swole larynx musculature is going to mean you're a great singer. So if you're feeling pain during singing, right after singing, or even the next day, then that's a sign that you might be, maybe pushing your voice a little too far, either in terms of the effort that you're putting out, just the use, using your voice. If you just talk all day, you're going to feel it. These are, tiny, tiny little vocal folds and muscles, and they do tire out. So it could be just that you're spending a little too much time than you can handle at the moment. The one note I want to give on knowing when you're pushing your voice too far and avoiding vocal injury, one note that's a little counterintuitive is that breathy singing might not cause you pain, but it can cause vocal damage. So I want to throw that out there. Breathy singing and unhealthy belting, that's like, yell singing, both of those lead to singers developing nodules or nodes. So breathy singing, that's lots of air leaking through your vocal folds, and you can hear that air. That is another unhealthy vocal technique that doesn't fall into the category of, something painful or, like we talked before, being able to see visual cues or feel or, hear the kind of sound of vocal strain. Breathy singing doesn't fall into that category, but it still can lead to damage. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. How much singing per day is safe? There's no definitive answer. You might start out with, let's say, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's kind of a good place to start. Most importantly, you should be paying attention to how your voice feels and adjusting accordingly. I usually recommend start with maybe 15 to 30 minutes per day. Even beginning singers, some of them, can sing up to an hour or more. All good. As long as you feel good and you're not feeling that have some vocal swelling the following day, all good. I usually recommend about 10 to 15 minutes of warm up or exercise, and then 20 plus minutes of song work, ear training, pitch matching, things like that. And you can also learn some music theory, do some song analysis, learn intervals, all kinds of stuff that you can do to increase your musical knowledge and become a better singer that doesn't involve quite as much active singing. So here are 5 ways to prevent vocal injury. Number 1, always warm up to prepare your voice to sing. Consider warming down too if you've had a really long taxing rehearsal or performance. And a gentle, efficient warm up, my favorite kind of pattern, starts with a lip trill. That's a that sound. Then either a hum or an NG. That's an open-mouthed hum where you're sustaining the ng sound. So you should feel the back of your tongue, meet your soft palate. It's just like you said the word sing and then held on to the end of it. And vocalizing on that. So after your trill, maybe an NG, opening up to a mum. Mum, 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 mum. Any pattern, but the mum is nice and protective. It also helps singers get into their mixed registration with pretty little effort. And then once you've prepared your voice, you've balanced and lined up your vocal folds with the trill, an NG, and a mum, then you can go to more open vowels and more challenging vocal exercises. So we don't ever want to start with an open vowel. Oh, that's the hardest thing you can do. So leave that for the end of your warm-up and start with more closed, supported exercises like the ones I mentioned. Okay, that was number 1, always warm up. Number 2, when you are sick or you have a sore throat for any reason, go on complete vocal rest or as much vocal rest as is, doable for you. When your vocal folds are swollen or irritated, they are much more injury prone. So don't push through. Don't, think, oh, I'm just going to muscle through. I'm just going to, push a little bit harder and it'll be okay. When you're sick, it's not a good time to test those waters because like I said, swollen, irritated vocal folds are already more injury prone. So that's not the time to be belting for 3 hours. It's also a good time to avoid being out in the cold, to avoid inhaling smoke, or being in a loud environment where you have to, over talk to just be heard. So if you're sick, you'll see every singer when they're sick, they kind of go into overdrive and, hibernate if they can. You can take a page out of their book and treat yourself really, really, really well and be really gentle with yourself when you're sick. Number 3, avoid the 2 main causes of vocal injury. That's unhealthy belting, which we talked about a little bit before, and that breathy tone. So unhealthy belting, that's carrying your chest voice up, your full weighty chest voice up really high, and it sounds kind of like you're yell singing, hey! If you keep taking that chest voice up higher and higher, eventually you're going to crack. But additionally, it's really high stress for your vocal folds. And that often leads to trouble. Some singers, look, don't get me wrong, some singers are just machines and they can belt all day long and they don't even feel it, and more power to them. Most singers are, human and and have trouble with that kind of belting. So unhealthy belting, that's, sort of painful, strained yell singing, and then breathy tone. So avoid those. You can belt, you can do chest drag belting or breathy singing in moderation, but please, please know what you're doing and know that you are breaking the rules of healthy technique a little bit. It's okay. It's not going to kill you, but if you do that over and over and over, you could run into problems down the road. And we've seen even professional singers who run into problems with either of those extremes. Adele had to have vocal surgery, and she's a renowned, amazing belter. But even her voice couldn't take that much belting for that long. John Mayer, on the other side of the spectrum, not really a belter, but he does sing with that really airy, breathy tone. He also had to go under the knife for vocal surgery. So again, we want to avoid either extreme. Number 4, speaking of extremes, avoid them even when you're not singing. So that means don't yell or scream a lot if you can avoid it. Don't whisper a lot. Again, know when you're breaking the rules of healthy phonation or healthy sound production, and do that sparingly. And number 5, use vocal pacing to avoid overuse. All that means is take breaks. So avoid long phone conversations with no break. You might, if you have a rehearsal, you might mark in that rehearsal. So for me as a singer, say I have, a 3-hour rehearsal earlier in the day and then a 2-hour performance in the evening, I probably will not sing full volume, full out for that 3-hour rehearsal. I want to save my voice for the performance. So for you as well, if you have a recording session or a performance, something where you need to be on your game, I don't want to say waste, but don't use all of your, vocal effort and stamina in the rehearsal. Yeah, sing full out to get a good mic check, but you don't need to sing full out for 3 hours. There's no need for that. So vocal pacing, even if you're not a professional voice user, if you are in customer service, if you talk on the phone a lot, if you're a teacher, oh my goodness, you're using your voice all day long. And if you can schedule breaks for yourself, especially, after work, once the day is done, give your voice a rest. Listen to music, listen to a podcast, but try to be off your voice for a little bit. How to tell if you currently have a vocal injury or if you've had one in the past. So we already talked about hoarseness, that if you are hoarse for 2 weeks or longer, that's a troubling sign. That means it's time to call your doctor and talk with them about what next steps should be. Other troubling symptoms to not ignore include loss of range. So if you used to be able to sing in a certain range and now you cannot access those pitches, that's troublesome. If you have pain or discomfort when you're singing or talking, pay attention to that. Here are 2 big ones, and these are 2 tests that you would do in a laryngologist's office. If you can't sing quietly and or you can't sing in head voice, those are kind of telltale signs of vocal injury. So if you can only sing loudly, and when you go to sing, ooh, sing quietly, nothing comes out. If you go, ooh, ooh, and it's a real struggle, that's a troubling sign. So if you can't sing quietly and you can't sing in head voice, that lighter, or falsetto register, ooh, if just air is coming out, or there's a big gap in your range. And last sign, if you have chronic vocal fatigue, so if no matter what you do, your voice is always tired and worn out, those are all signs that you want to pay attention to and you want to bring up to your doctor, because again, no amount of vocal warm-ups are going to cure a vocal injury. The first thing you should do is stop using your voice, go on vocal rest as much as possible, call your doctor, get their advice. I want to add a note here about beginning singers and um, if you don't know the limits of your range, then it can be a little bit difficult to figure out what's normal for you. So I say that because if I'm saying, oh, if you can't access your head voice, that's a problem. What if you've never sung in head voice before? That might just be an unexplored portion of your range, especially male singers who are, speaking in chest voice and usually singing in chest voice as well. Maybe they've just never found their head voice. So with a lot of beginning singers, part of a voice teacher's job is to find exercises and sounds that get you to uncover different portions of your voice that you maybe didn't know you had. So if you are a beginning singer, particularly a lower voiced singer, and you're freaking out right now, you're like, oh no, I don't have a head voice. It's very possible, it's likely that you can access your head voice, you just haven't yet. And so doing things like, the owl hoot, woo, or a little meow sound, meow, meow. Anything that's high, floaty, light. It doesn't even have to be singing per se. It can just be making noise up there. Woo, woo. All of those kind of sounds, I, as a voice teacher, would encourage you to explore before you freak out about not being able to access your head voice. So if you're a beginning singer, you don't have as good of a handle on your range and what your voice feels like and what to expect. So give it some time. But if you do have those symptoms, hoarse voice, and you really think that something is wrong, even if you are a beginning singer, of course, ask your doctor. How do people damage their voices? Most vocal damage occurs as the result of misuse, overuse, or abuse. So misuse, this is a little bit of a recap, but misuse can include any unhealthy technique resulting in vocal strain. And the most common unhealthy techniques we already talked about are unhealthy belting and singing with an overly breathy tone. Overuse is singing or speaking too much for too long without adequate vocal rest. You might be overusing your voice if your throat feels tired and sore at the end of the day, or if you feel pain and swelling the next day. And abuse includes yelling, screaming, inhaling smoke. All of that causes irritation and swelling, which can contribute to long-term damage. I'm sorry, smokers sometimes ask, is there any way to kind of mitigate the damaging effects of smoke? And I can tell you to make sure you're really hydrated and to, maybe not smoke right before singing, unless you're going for that really raspy sound, which some singers do. But really the healthiest thing for your voice is to not be smoking, if that's possible for you to work towards as a goal. It's also very, very common for vocal damage to occur when a singer is sick and continues to sing on swollen, irritated vocal folds. So again, when you're sick, your voice is more injury prone. That's not the time to be pushing it to the max. So if you are sick, have a sore throat, that's when you should be taking it easy and letting the swelling go down. It's going to take a lot longer for that swelling to go down if you continue using your voice and kind of reactivating that swelling. So we, in about 10 minutes, will do Q&A. I want to talk a little bit about caring for your voice like a professional singer. I have been singing, since childhood. I don't remember not singing. So I've been hypervigilant about vocal health since I was, probably 8 years old. I know that sounds crazy, but I started taking voice lessons at age 8, and I, was maybe on the playground one day, screaming, yelling, having a good time. And the next day I had a voice lesson, and my voice teacher asked me, were you screaming at school? Or have you been like screaming or yelling? And I was shocked. I was like, yes. And she could hear it in my voice. She could hear that my voice wasn't operating how it normally does. So that scared me. And I can tell you honestly, I don't think I've screamed since. So I'm a little bit of an extreme case, and I do use my voice every day. It's my job. Um, so kind of also part of my job is scaring you just a little bit, because your voice is something that can't be replaced. It's not an instrument like a guitar that we can put new strings on and everything's fine. Your voice is a part of your body, so it's susceptible to the other things that can affect your body: the amount of sleep you get, medications you take, stress, menstrual cycle. All of these things can affect the way that your voice operates. And so, for a serious singer, beginning or professional, you want to take care of your instrument. You want to do what's in your power to protect your voice and treat it well. Now, your voice is amazing. For being such a small instrument, it can make a lot of noise. And it is, considering how much we ask of it, it is pretty durable. But it is not, it's not a machine. And we can't just replace it if we're injured. So speaking from personal experience, I have not had to have any vocal surgery. I've not even gotten scoped, which would actually be a good idea for me to do, just to visualize my vocal folds and see what they look like when they're healthy, or at least when I'm not experiencing any symptoms. But following these practices that I've already talked about, and then I'll talk about a little bit more, that has saved me from ever having to go on extended vocal rest, or cancel a show or recording session due to vocal damage. I've had to cancel things due to sickness, and sometimes you just it's a bummer, but it is what it is. Anyways, so all that to say, I'm maybe a little bit more careful than you would be if you're not a professional voice user. But I just want to put you at ease that if you are taking care of your voice, barring some abnormal circumstances or other health issues, you can avoid, vocal injury. That's the point of this whole lesson today, is avoiding vocal injury, keeping your voice healthy. Okay, so here's 8 tips on caring for your voice like a pro singer. A couple of these I've already talked about, but I'll run through them. So number 1, keep your body healthy with good sleep, exercise, and a healthy diet, and doing what you can to prevent sickness. That's, again, being sick. We don't like being sick because then our vocal folds are more injury prone. So we want to avoid being sick as much as possible. That means we have to take care of ourselves. Again, your body or your voice is a part of your body. So if your body's sick, your voice is going to suffer too. So keep your body healthy. Number 2, if you do get sick, go on vocal rest, and if you can, hibernate. I can't tell you the amount of, unfortunately, social events I've had to, maybe be silent during, or even sometimes stay home from, because I just know if I'm in that situation, I'm going to be talking loudly, and I just can't afford to do that. When your voice is your job, you have to take care of it. Number 3, stay hydrated always, not just when you're about to sing. Hydrated vocal folds are happy vocal folds. That's all I'll say on that. Stay hydrated. Number 4, take special care of your voice by using a personal steamer or a nebulizer or a humidifier in your room. Some singers use those all the time, others just when they're sick, So for me, I use a humidifier or a personal steamer. I have this little, Vicks steamer. And I basically only use that when I'm sick. But others use it daily, especially if you live in a really dry climate. You might want to look into that, a nebulizer, personal steamer, humidifier to further hydrate those vocal folds. Number 5, consider doing a saline sinus rinse. Again, this can be an everyday thing or just when you're sick. The one that I have used in the past is called Meal Med. It's a squeeze bottle situation, and you have this saline packet that you dissolve in warm, not hot, warm, distilled or previously boiled water, and you squeeze. It goes up through one, nasal cavity, and then the water comes out the other side. You'll see what was up in your nose. If you're sick, there's going to be some mucus, gross. But even just day-to-day pollution, if you live in a dusty area, if you have allergies, if you have postnasal drip, those would all be really, really good reasons to incorporate a saline sinus rinse into your routine. Number 6, if you feel a sore throat, gargle with warm salt water. Your tendency might be to use some medication to reduce the swelling of your vocal folds. I'll just give kind of the singer's perspective on that. And again, maybe we're going a little bit overboard, but a lot of singers will not use medication that numbs pain or, that takes away pain, because if your pain goes away, you no longer have that signal from your body of like the state of your voice. So the fear is that you take medication or you do a numbing spray or something like that, and then you feel good and you sing or you talk a lot and you're not feeling the, swelling and irritation as much. So you're overdoing it and kind of pushing your voice past where it's ready to go. So obviously, I want you to be comfortable. If you're sick, you can use a numbing spray, you can use medication to deal with your pain, but just be mindful of that if you are, taking medication and then going out and singing or, using your voice a lot. Pain is your body's signal to you that something is wrong and that it needs to heal. So anyways, the overzealous singer's perspective on that is that we don't want to numb the pain and then push our voice too far. Okay, number 7, keep hydrated with not just water, but also herbal tea, honey, lozenges. I have a little bowl of Ricola by my, piano when I'm giving voice lessons. Some singers will just straight up take a spoonful of honey. I know it's not low carb, but it's nice and soothing and also has antibacterial properties as well. So there's a reason you see singers with tea, especially like throat coat and stuff like that. And number 8, be aware of how different foods, drinks, and medications affect you. And especially before a performance or a recording session, you might want to avoid those things. So a lot of times people ask, does dairy affect your voice? Does spicy food affect your voice? Do certain drinks or medications affect your voice? And the answer is anything that can affect your body can affect your voice, but nothing is passing over your vocal folds. If food or drink was passing over your vocal folds, you would start coughing because that means that it was going down your trachea and you're in danger of aspirating something into your lungs. So in general, the food that you drink or the food you eat and the drinks that you drink are not passing over your vocal folds, but they could still affect you. So a lot of singers, even though the whole, dairy and mucus thing has somewhat been debunked, some singers still do notice that their body produces more mucus or the mucus that they do have thickens when they're, drinking dairy products or eating sugar, things like that. So again, the advice is be aware of how things affect you and then avoid them if necessary. For me, I've noticed if I'm eating really, really spicy food, then, it seems like my mucus in my throat is a little bit thicker, a little bit harder to deal with. And so I'll know, don't eat a bunch of spicy food before, stepping out on stage. And then medications as well. And alcohol, last note on alcohol, you might actually feel like you are singing better. Um, mentally, you might be feeling good. And also, since it's, a bit of a relaxing effect, you also might legitimately be singing better than if you're like tense. But alcohol can dry you out and it can also lead to swelling. So take that with just take that note of caution that if you're drinking alcohol, maybe the night of singing, it might not affect you too much, but you could feel the effect of that the next day. All right, time for some Q&A. I would love to answer any questions you guys have on your vocal health, any strain or pain that you're feeling. And before I get some questions, I will talk about some exercises for warming up and warming down. Lenza's asking if this is live. It is live. Camilla's asking, how about artists? Ooh, this is a good question, Camilla. Thank you for asking. How about artists like Billie Eilish? Is that healthy or unhealthy breathiness? You are so right. Billie Eilish uses a lot of breath. She also uses a lot of vocal fry in her tone. She has that raspy vocal fry sound sometimes and tons of air. I can't make a judgment on, whether that's healthy or unhealthy for her voice. All I know is that in general, singing with that overly breathy tone is not a good habit to be in for most singers. Again, like I said before, other singers can kind of get away with really, really loud and strong chest voice belting, and they don't seem to ever have an issue. So perhaps Billie Eilish is a singer who just naturally has maybe a breathier tone, and that's just what she's got. So yeah, it's a tricky one to answer, but I can say that a lot of singers, particularly young female singers today, were growing up listening to this kind of like whisper pop style. Both, Billie Eilish, Julia Michaels, Selena Gomez, a lot of singers use that kind of whisper pop. And unfortunately, a lot of those singers are also having to go to the doctor because they have vocal issues because of that. And the reason, so that hasn't been studied a ton because it's relatively new. But the thought behind it is that the excess air being, pushed through your vocal folds is drying them out, for one, making them a little bit more injury prone. And then the kind of second theory on why breathy singing is bad and causes vocal injury is because your vocal folds are not coming together cleanly and efficiently. So if you think of your vocal folds, coming together, vibrating together, if they are always just slightly apart, the thought is that your vocal folds are compensating to come together, and they're compensating by building up some extra material, kind of like you develop a callus, or, we call those vocal nodules or nodes. Tyler's asking, is it normal to burp a lot while singing after eating food, or is that a sign of acid reflux? Is it any food or is it specific food? I would kind of ask yourself what it is that you're eating. And sure, I mean, if you're having a lot of gas and, potentially acid reflux, if it's reflux, I think one of those symptoms is that you would be feeling, some heartburn as well. Again, not a doctor, um, but I don't know how much singing is involved with that. Um, but anyways, um, Augustina's asking, what is your best confidence tip? Um, Augustina, this is a tough one. I think I've talked about this on the forum with you before. So the way that I've grown my confidence, number one is experience, just doing the thing that you're afraid of doing. And once you get through that and you realize that you survived, you'll learn. You'll learn to not be so stressed out next time, because you'll be able to remember, okay, I was really nervous for this performance or whatever it was, and I did fine. I didn't die. So it can give you some confidence going into the next one. But performing and kind of opening yourself up to judgment from other people is always going to be scary. I get scared for auditions. Most performances I don't get scared for, but auditions, oh man, because it's just like a job interview. You're going in and a job is on the line. So, other than experience, the things that help me are putting as much of my focus as I can into the lyrics and the story that I'm telling, rather than the melody and how my voice is sounding. If I'm thinking about how I'm sounding, then I'm in my head and I'm probably not going to sound my best. Whereas if I take a second to, breathe, think about the character, even if the character is myself, but, in a different circumstance, and think about telling the story of the song as truly and honestly as I can, that's my number one confidence tip. I know it doesn't sound like it's related to confidence, but it helps me to not focus on my nerves and instead focus on communicating the story, the message, the lyrics. Ismail's asking, what if I don't feel pain, but after singing lots of times, I feel some phlegm in my voice and at the same time a little dry? Ismail, so it's very, very common when you're singing, because, you have those vocal folds coming together. It's very common for a little bit of phlegm to kind of be kicked up by that process. I would ask how hydrated you are. If you are not super hydrated, then you're going to experience more of that, dry feeling, and your phlegm will be thicker, rather than, if you're really hydrated, that'll help to thin out your phlegm and kind of deal with that. I don't want to get too gross, but I would say that's number one, is to make sure you're super hydrated. And then again, if there are specific foods that are increasing the production of phlegm, or you notice the phlegm that you're dealing with is thicker, then you might want to avoid those foods, especially before singing. And yeah, again, not a doctor. If you're very concerned about it, ask your doctor, but I can tell you that it's normal to feel some phlegm kicked up after you're singing or warming up. Camilla's asking, is using too much vocal fry a good thing? Why does a damaged voice have more fry? Is it protective? So Camilla, vocal fry, if you're new to this thing, vocal fry is a distinct vocal register. It's also called the pulse register, and it's lower in pitch than your chest voice. So you have your chest voice, and then below that you have the pulse register. And that's what vocal fry sounds like. Usually the cause of vocal fry kind of creeping into your speech is you're relaxing a little bit too much. So Or you're talking in a really low part of your register. So if I'm talking down here, then my voice is already up against vocal fry. Sorry if that annoyed you. So I would say in general, I don't hear vocal fry as a sign of damage, unless maybe smoking leads to more vocal fry, the like dryness. But in general, vocal fry is, when you're speaking in kind of an artificially low register for your natural speaking voice, and if you're just kind of relaxing, because vocal fry is just super relaxed. So if you're not maintaining, good breath support and vocal effort, then you can easily kind of devolve into vocal fry. And I think it has more to do with that than what's actually happening on your vocal folds, if that makes sense. Doki is asking, how does one sing through fright without letting the emotion affect your singing, bringing a wrong feeling to the song being sung? That's a great question. So if you are afraid when you're singing, which a lot of us, nerves, fear, anxiety, all of those kind of live in the same emotional realm. Again, my tip is the same in terms of focusing on the emotional content and context of the song, so that you're not, kind of putting out fear and singing with that fear. So if my song is a love song, and I'm thinking about the object or the subject of that song, if I'm thinking about who I'm singing to, how they make me feel, the scene in which I'm singing this song, all of those can help basically distract you or divert your attention from the feeling of fear and nerves and anxiety to something that will help your performance and connect with your audience rather than close you off to them. Tyler's asking, can you be too hydrated as a singer? And how can you differentiate between hoarseness and dehydration? Oh man, that's a good question. I don't think you can be too hydrated as a singer, but you can get water poisoning if you drink so much water and, don't pee. So, the whatever it is, 64 ounces a day, whatever the, recommended amount of water is. I think I drink more than that, but yeah, like medically it's possible to be overhydrated. But hopefully you're not going to run into that as long as you're not, chugging a bunch of water and not going to the bathroom. So Camilla's asking, she had confused vocal fry with hoarseness. So let me read that definition of hoarseness again for you. So hoarseness, if you have ever had a sore throat and you're sick, that's what hoarseness sounds like. So hoarseness is an abnormal vocal quality that can be manifested as a voice that sounds breathy, strained, rough, raspy, tremorous, strangled, or weak, or a voice that has a higher or lower pitch than usual. So vocal fry is a separate register, and you can use vocal fry in your singing. Some people also kind of use it in their speech. You probably heard me kind of trailing off into vocal fry sometimes. I hope that makes the difference clear. If you are speaking or singing and you can't help but go into vocal fry, then that would be concerning. If you're singing, and I can kind of assume with that definition, this was from the American Family Physician, the rough and raspy, we can kind of assume that vocal fry could be an element of that. But yeah, I guess long story short, if you can't stop using vocal fry, that's when it would be a problem. Okay. Thank you guys for joining. This was fun. I will be here, I think next Sunday. So not Saturday. Usually I do live lessons on Saturday, but it'll be posted on the channel. You can, set a reminder. Hopefully my new mic will be here as well. Excited to try that out within the live session. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed. You're welcome to leave comments or head over to the forum with suggestions for our next live session. And that is 30. You're free to go. No more instruction here, but I'm just posting 30daysinger.com/forums in the comments if you would like to head there and give me some suggestions for what you want to learn about next. All right, guys, have a good rest of your weekend.